Welcome back everyone. Quick 10-second recap of what happened in the first half. I set up my board state. He has Manhunt out, but I have Sports Hopper. All three Jacksons are used. So that is the important thing to talk about now. The game is half over when all three Jacksons are gone. Remember in the first half I talked about knocking down the root of all evil, which is recursion. There's 6 recursion cards, 3 museums and 3 Jacksons. With all 3 Jacksons out of play, I am now halfway towards winning the game. With only 3 recursion cards left in his deck, my opponent will be stuck with agendas in hand. Because without recursion, there is no way for CTM to shuffle agendas from HQ back into R&D. Slowly but surely, HQ will be flooded with agendas, and that is when I can go in and steal them for the win. But more on that later. For now, I'm forced to clear tags because I just got hit by hard-hitting news. My opponent played hard-hitting news because I made a run and was able to dump a lot of credits into that, a lot of diversified portfolio cash, but, well, I still managed to float the 4 tags and beat them all the next turn. So all's fine. The problem with hard-hitting news is that in the 2 clicks that my opponent spent before playing the hard-hitting news, he was able to get 2 items on table. Reality 3D, and a couple more other cards, including a Museum of History under server 18, if memory serves me correctly. So this is possibly a problem, because now that I'm down to 4 credits, I cannot possibly run again. If I do, what happens? I get hit by another hard-hitting news, that's the end of my game. All my hard work gone to waste. Let's remind ourselves why we're here. When you're playing a pure control deck, and you seek to trash assets, keep your opponent's assets down, the last thing you want to do is to make a stupid mistake or something very careless that just completely undoes all your effort and causes you to lose in the stupidest way. As it stands, I'm doing very well. The museums are out of play, all 3 Jacksons are gone, but I'm not out of the woods yet. One small little slip up can easily cost me the entire game and waste all my effort, and that is the last thing you want to do. So you must tread with a lot of caution right here. One misstep and it could all go down to waste. So that's not a museum, that is a city hall. And city hall is possibly bad news because now Alex is able to summon all his museums back. In fact, those are 2 museums in servers 21 and 22, and he ices up 1 museum on server 21. Let's call that the Iced Museum, and the other one the Naked Museum. They are both known problems that I need to deal with, but as I mentioned, I don't have enough money to contest his server. So what do I do here? I play double prepaid and same old sure gamble. This is where I exalt same old thing, which is pretty much a very staple card in a lot of runner decks nowadays. Why is same old thing so good, even though it costs you... Okay, let's talk about same old thing later. Something very important happens here. My opponent draws into Salem's Hospitality, looks at his stuff for a while, probably looking at my archives, and then plays it, naming blackmail, burning the blackmail from my hand. This is the key moment that I stood in front of my laptop screen and froze for a moment, because I could have lost the game right there. This was the biggest mistake Alex made the entire game. He named blackmail instead of levy. If he had named levy, I had no way to get it back, I would have lost the game. Instead, I'm now able to play Lucky Find and quickly levy. I had to rush to levy before my opponent got his next turn. Because if I gave my opponent one more turn, he could use Museum to recur the Salem's Hospitality and play it using Mumbai City Hall because it is an alliance card. Sniping the levy from my hand and ending my game. So thankful he didn't hit the levy. But that was a mistake that I made, which was not using the levy or not having a same old thing on the board. I used both my same old things to recur economy events so that I could have the money to trash his assets again. However, that was a mistake. What I should have done was to levy. Better be safe than sorry. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying you need to be cautious. It's so easy in such a long drawn out game that was easily stretched into the half-hour mark to lose your concentration for just a single turn, and that loss of concentration can cost you the loss of your entire game. Have you ever ran into R&D with only 2 cards left in hand and then hit a snare? Yep. That is basically how I felt when I escaped near doom there. That is something that happens so often. So often. Avoid it at all costs. When you have the upper hand and are winning as I am here, this is the last thing you want happening to you. So proceed very carefully. Don't lose the stupid mistakes. Alright, I think I've harped on that enough. Let's continue. Because I lost the tempo from playing the levy in the same turn as the lucky find, which meant that I couldn't utilize the prepaid credits. What happened was, I'm poorer than I should be, and as a result, my opponent's able to get off a couple of museum fires. So this is another thing that I would like to comment about as well, psychologically. It seems like I am sliding back, losing progress, and that happens from time to time. After all, Netrunner is often a game of tug of war. Sometimes you gain ground, sometimes you lose ground. It's very important to stay unfazed. Not just in when things are going bad. I know from my games at regionals, my opponents have in the past commented that I look so stressed when playing, and it definitely shows on your face, and it definitely shows in your gameplay. When you are terrified, when you are mentally affected by your opponent's strong plays, that is the chance where you slip up, because negative thoughts enter your mind, and that definitely affects your gameplay. Another possible thing that I've noticed affect people's gameplay is going up against a famous, well-known player, such as Alex White. I mean, this is a very good example. It's quite important that when you're up against a big-name player, not to be faced or dominated from the very start. I mean, sure, you're not going to go into the game with the mindset that you're going to beat them, but neither should you go into the game with the mindset that it's an unwinnable matchup, that they are just godlike and you are not going to touch them. I mean, this is not chess. Sometimes you just luck out a win. Sometimes, due to the draw of cards or even just the matchups, sometimes you're favored. And that is something that you should never overlook. Again, always play to your outs and never give up until the very end where there really is no way out. Play for even the tiniest chance of winning the game. So that's my advice. Don't lose confidence in yourself, because the moment you feel that the game is over, the moment that you think the game cannot be won, that is when you've lost the game. Even though you might still have a fighting shot, if you are mentally conceding defeat and are not taking that fighting shot, you will never win. So back to the game. You see archives getting thinner and thinner as my opponent is able to reshuffle more and more cards back to R&D. Again, it looks like I'm losing, and I am indeed losing a bit of ground. But I know that if I stay focused and go for what exactly I want, which in this case is economy events in my deck, I am good to go. Unfortunately, I haven't been drawing any of my econ events. A single gamble would give me 7 credits right now. That 7 credits to beat the double trace is going to be so huge, but unfortunately, I can't wait forever. I can't keep waiting and allow him to amass a critical board state. The problem is my opponent already has an Aryabhata tech res, that's server 24. If I let him get a Petri dish and a couple more nonsensical cards out, such as the DRT in his hand, I could be locked out. So I need to go after his museums right now. And mentioned in the first video about batch trashing, if you trash the one museum, you've got to trash them all. So I need to trash server 21 as well, and that is why I had to spend some time to install the files from my hand, so I can deal with any ice coming my way. Because as you notice, not only did I not draw any event economy, the blackmails didn't come either. Pretty awful draws all around. But, well, Muckraker does show its face, and I need to deal with that. That's 4 subroutines and 1 card to punch strength, minus 1 subroutine, because the last subroutine is irrelevant if I'm not tagged. I make a mistake here. I paid 4 cards when I in fact could have paid a bit less. I could let the first or even the second trace fire. With 1 link, the first trace is credit neutral. My opponent surely wouldn't spend all his credits to boost the entire trace just to force the Aryabhata tag on me. I can simply clear the tag. So I really should have let the Muckraker trace at least 1 or even 2 traces fire. I was more than rich enough to pay through the trace, and I definitely didn't need to lose that many cards from my hand. Looking at my hand, there is a fork in there. You can be sure that I'm thinking to myself right here, I'm gonna use that fork very soon to kill the Muckraker, because otherwise my opponent will simply jam his next museum into that server again, making it very difficult for me to get through. And even though, as I mentioned, this deck has 99 cards, I am starting to run out of cards, so I can't run through that Muckraker forever. So it was a small mistake there, should have trashed less cards to get through the museum. But most importantly, trash the museum I did, that's really all that matters for now. So, very awkward situation where I have only one click left, can't play the Lucky Find from my hand, gotta click for a credit. I guess I could draw as well, that was another option, but again, I didn't want to drain my deck of cards too quickly. So my opponent resists his last museum to fetch more museums back to his deck. And this is where he begins flooding out. Without Jacksons to control Agenda Flood, CTM actually doesn't have a lot of ways to deal with Agenda Flood in HQ. I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck, and if you know this deck well enough, you will know how to counter it that way, even if you're not playing a lot of hate cards as I am. Speaking of hate cards, another thing I need to mention is a lot of people seem to have this mentality. Wow, this guy is playing so many hate cards, and even then he's having a very hard time keeping those assets down. There's still so many assets on the board. This is this is not looking good for the. I mean, this is just a broken deck, isn't it? Well, my response is yes. The hate is a bit much, and that is why what I really don't like about the entire Alliance Museum thing. It basically forces you to play Wizard if you want to have any shot of controlling the opponent's board state at all, or Valencia Rebirth. And yeah, I hate it more for the fact that it stifles the runner deck building process more than the fact that it's, you know, degenerate. But even though I'm playing a lot of hate cards, it isn't really that much of a struggle. I'm still keeping afloat of the core. I'm still doing a lot better than the core. As you notice, if you're looking at the game from Alex's point of view, you realize that he has very few outs left. What can you do? The most he can do is to try to reshuffle the consulting visit with whatever museums he still has left on the board. Not that many left, because I just trashed them all. I mean, there's still one more left in the deck, I think, but I've been religiously trashing the museums ever since I started running. The moment I decided, okay, I have enough credits, let's go for the Muckraker, let's trash the museums in servers 21 and 22, I didn't stop. The museums were all suppressed. So what can my opponent do at this point? Can only slot the top deck museum into his Iced Up server and play hard-hitting news on me. So at this point, my opponent's treading water. And that's when you know he's losing. When the agenda starts piling up in hand, and there's no way he can do much about it. So he does play hard-hitting news and is able to outtrace me, which is unfortunate. This means that I'm forced to spend the next turn clearing all 4 tags, which will give him 1 tick of that museum. So that's unfortunate, but again, I'm still winning the game because I'm suppressing the most important part of his deck, which is the recursion. He's finding it very hard to deal with me at all. He doesn't have the lock set up on me. He doesn't have the full Petri dish into Aryabhata tag into DRT nonsense. And I'm not nowhere near getting tagged. I still have a lot of money. I have 11 credits to his 5. I'm still looking pretty good. So yeah, so the moment he rests the museum in the Muckraker, my decision next turn was very straightforward. I'm gonna play the fork from my hand and burn down his museum. So here comes a very subtle play. I didn't intentionally make it, but when I look back at it, it was a safe play. So you'll see that it's a DRT on the board, and DRT says, well, if you run without enough cards in your hand, you die. And again, you don't want to make these kind of stupid mistakes at this junction in the game, when you are so deep in and you are so close to victory. It doesn't look like it, but I'm actually pretty close to victory. Again, once I kill that museum, what's he gonna do? If he searches up for museum with the city hall that's rests behind the ice, I'm just gonna trash it instantly. And if he waits for the next museum to come, he'll be flooded with agendas by then. Anyway, so I dirty laundry the city surveillance first. This is actually pretty crucial because this triggers both the CTM and the manhunt trace. And this is quite important because by getting the traces out of the way, I can then run without worrying about getting flatlined by DRT, because the only way I'm getting tagged is by both of those traces. So again, trace 2 for the manhunt, trace 4 for the CTM, both reduced by 1 credit thanks to the spot hopper, reduced by another credit thanks to bad pub, and trashing The city surveillance is completely free thanks to all my recurring credits. I'm down only to 4 credits, and that's pretty dangerous. Again, a single hard-hitting news will hit me really, really hard at this point, but there's no turning back. I need to kill the museum right now. With the added bonus that if the museum is killed, he can't recur hard-hitting news again. He has to hope for a lucky top deck if he's even running more than 1 copy of it. So at this point, I'm really going all in for that. It's quite important to get rid of the museum at this point, and I really shouldn't be taking such risks, but to be fair, I've not been having the best draw so far. I was forced to play a levy without using the prepaid credits, and I didn't get much of my burst econ after the levy, so I'm poorer than I really should be. But, well, now's not the time to wait along any longer. Sometimes you have to take the risk, evaluate the possibility of the runner top decking a diversified portfolio into hard-hitting news, realize that it's probably not going to happen, go for the fault. So here's the important part. I ditched my entire hand to the fault. I would die to the DRT, but because my opponent has no way to trace me, I'm safe. So I killed the museum, and I'm still kind of ahead of credits of my opponent, so that's not too bad. The dirty laundry did give me enough credits to stay somewhat afloat of the hard-hitting news. I'm on 9 credits, a hard-hitting news will bring me down to 8. So I'm fine. Will bring me down to 1 credit, minus 8. So yeah, I'm still fine. And you look at his hand. Again, with all his recursion gone, what can you do? I draw into a gamble, and that's go time for me. Gamble gives me so much money. I'm now racing way ahead of my opponent, and now I can actually afford to spend a lot of time just keeping his assets down. Every turn, you bet with 5 recurring credits to trash assets. I'm gonna trash 2 of them a turn. I'm just scanning the board right now and thinking of which 2 to trash. Certainly the city surveillance. The other one, I have to pick between DRT and the Petri dish. And given that my opponent is nowhere near tagging me, I think the Petri dish is going to be the right call. So I'm going to trash both. And it's at this point that I start gaining a lot more confidence, and my opponent is probably losing a lot of steam. So again, at this point, you just have to keep sticking to your guns, knowing that the strategy will pay off. And I guess it's important to choose the right strategy in the first place. If you pick the wrong strategy, if you think that you can contest CTM's assets when you don't in fact have enough link, for example, to beat the Manhunt trace and the CTM trace, then you could be in a bit of trouble. But I knew for sure that with 5 recurring credits and 1 recurring credit from the link and 1 recurring credit from the backpub and 3 recurring credits from the prepaid voice pads, surely that's enough to keep at least the most important of assets down. And I was right. Now that any semblance of a lock is out for my opponent, Alex's main line of play is to tag flood me and then win by a Psycho Build, but that is definitely off the tables now. So the only thing he can do at this point is to jam what looks like an asset into the remote. It's actually his executive retreat. He has to do this. Otherwise, he knows that on my turn, I'm simply going to just run 2 more assets and keep clearing his board until he's out of assets. He has to keep the remote play going up to keep the pressure on me. So I did draw into a blackmail, and I was considering blackmailing server 30 at this point. But I asked myself, what if that's a bait? Maybe that's not something that that's just something to waste my blackmail on. I don't really want to waste my blackmail at this point. Maybe I should draw a card, and then if I draw enough useless cards, maybe I can just face plant into it and use files to break. Besides, I'm also a bit poorer than my opponent. On 10 credits, that's a bit dubious, because after paying for the CTM trace, for the Manhunt trace, I'll be pretty poor, and I could be open to a hard-hitting news. But drawing to the second blackmail made things perfectly clear. With nothing else to spend my prepaid credits on, I'm going to blackmail into the server and hit the executive retreat. Now, I still didn't know what my opponent's hand was. Mind you, I'm playing in the dark. Seeing a big 3-point agenda behind a single piece of ice against Valencia, I'm like, well damn. I just stumbled into his trap. I'm gonna get hit by mid-seasons. That is bad. That is really bad. I'm gonna click for 2 credits, and I hope the mid-seasons doesn't come. My opponent draws. He doesn't find the mid-seasons or the diversified portfolio he needs right here to tag me. So he just chucked something into the remote, and at that point I was like, why did he do this? Surely, if he's playing naked agendas, he must be flooded in HQ. After a bit of thought, I decided that, well, if he can't punish me for stealing one agenda, he can't punish me for stealing another, and since there are probably agendas in hand, let's go to HQ, swing by to grab a restructured data pool, let's do it again, swing by to grab the last restructured data pool for the win. And that's the game. If you're a long-time viewer of this channel, you'll know that after my games, I typically do a game strategy and gameplay review. This game, however, I learned something completely different. Playing against a prison deck requires a substantially different skill set. Not so much of game strategy, but of the mentality with which you approach it. When you start a game, you must know your outs. You must know the cards in your deck that you need and the cards in your deck that will come into no use at all. As you saw, I immediately just discarded all my parasites, all my cutlery. They're not going to come into play. I was looking for the rebirth, the sports hopper, the scrubber. And when I saw them, I played those outs. I played a pure control style deck. I did not mess around with HQ, R&D, or archives at all. As you saw, throughout the entire game, up until that very last turn, I made a grand total of 1 central run, and that was the laundry on HQ, just to get money. Stick to your guns. As I said, knowing that I was playing a pure control strategy, my main focus, and in fact my only focus, was to destroy the recursion. Don't get distracted by the temptation of agendas in your hand. One of the commentators kept asking, when do you switch over to HQ or R&D? Perhaps when you get tagged and that's your last resort, sure, run the centrals, try to get those 7 points. But I was never in any danger of getting tagged, so I never needed to hit those centrals, and that is something that I kept in mind the entire game. So yeah, I did keep 2 blackmails in my hand. In case things go wrong, at least I can Hail Mary on centrals and perhaps pull out an undeserved win. But otherwise, stick to your guns because you know that your strategy will never fail you if you execute it correctly. And never give up. That's the most important thing. If there's one thing you have to take away from this video, losing half the battle when you know that you're playing against a museum deck is not good. Don't lose the psychological battle. Tell yourself you can do it, and if anything, make it a point to defeat them so that you can sneer in their face for playing such a degenerate deck. It's kind of like putting a photo of your ex or someone you hate a lot on the dartboard and just throwing darts at it. Make it your impetus, your motivation to win the game. Don't make it your downfall. Play with a calm mind. This is very important. Don't play impulsively and decide, oh, I need to do this, and don't think things through. Always stay disciplined. I always stay focused and always stay above the credit threshold I needed to. I made sure not to put myself at risk of getting flatline. The one time I slipped was when I left myself open to Salem's into Levy. That was my one mistake, and that was purely due to inexperience with playing against the CTM deck. I have not really practiced with this. Again, in fact, I haven't played against Prison CTM before. So I didn't play it perfectly, but if you're disciplined, if you execute your strategy the way you want to, you can't go wrong. You really can't. Always play safe rather than sorry. Don't go for a very risky run, leave yourself lower at 8 credits, and get punished. Know what your opponent can do and cannot do against you, and make sure that you always stay at the correct credit level or stay safe from the flat line. And finally, when you finally do find those 7 general points after the corp gives up, savor your sweet hard-earned victory and make a very, I don't know, narcissistic video of yourself winning the game. That's how I did it anyway. I hope y'all can learn from this, even though the most wanted list and the FAQ will make most prison decks dead come August. These are still very important points to take away. Maybe you will never play against a prison deck again because the good players won't play them anymore, but the mental approach with which the mentality with which you approach Netrunner games is something that you can learn from this video, and I hope this has been pretty informative. Thanks for watching, and happy netrunning. Goodbye.